There she is, New Shepard live on the launch pad, preparing to take Captain Kirk himself, the legendary William Shatner, to space. And a gorgeous view down the rocket. And there you can see the capsule from the top of the booster. And the capsule touchdown. Welcome back, the newest astronauts.
Wow, William Shatner, 90 years old, boldly going for real. Now that is a captain. God bless you. Moonjumper here. Welcome to Who Cares What I Think. This is going to be a weird episode. Weird in the sense that this represents, you could say, the first installment of a series of videos critiquing the state of modern Star Trek, at least partially fulfilling the promise I made almost 2 years ago, November 18th, 2019, when I dropped my very first episode of Who Cares What I Think. It was a review of Underworld Blood Wars. That's neither here nor there, but the point is, at the end of that video, I announced in no uncertain terms that the very next video was going to be a deep dive analysis into Star Trek Discovery versus Star Trek Picard. Suffice to say, that did not happen. And here we are 2 years later, and it has still not happened until now, and for that I do apologize. What can I say? The 2020 apocalypse hit, prompting me to talk about more pressing topics, and this and several other topics just got shoved aside. And that's hard for me to say because I am such a Trekkie fanatic. I have been since I was a little boy in the 1970s. In my world, anything more important than Star Trek has got to be earth-shattering. And 2020 was definitely that. It seems 2021 hadn't gotten much better, but I don't want to talk about it. So let's talk about Star Trek. Now, in the interim, I have talked about Star Trek on this program. Last year, I did do a multi-part breakdown of Star Trek Lower Decks, a series to my very pleasant surprise I have rather enjoyed. And in those videos, I did touch upon some of the same issues and concerns you're about to hear me talking about in regards to Discovery and Picard. I even used some of the same graphics I had originally created for this video series, Picard versus Discovery, which I was already compiling in October of 2019 before I launched my channel, and it sort of began as a reaction to the Picard trailer which had dropped at the New York Comic-Con earlier that year. Picard hadn't even premiered yet. Discovery Season 2 had just ended in April. Discovery Season 3 wasn't out yet, let alone here we are coming up on Season 4, really in a matter of days, November 18th, after Star Trek Prodigy drops even sooner, October 28th. And we've already had 2 seasons of Lower Decks. CBS All Access even changed its name to Paramount Plus. And don't forget Strange New Worlds is coming too. That's how much has happened since I started this thing, so here's what I'm going to do. And this is why I said it's going to be kind of a weird video, but bear with me. I put a lot of hours into this project and then it just got shoved aside 2 years ago. Instead of trying to readapt and rework the whole thing from scratch and trying to update it with everything we know now, I'm just going to go ahead and play for you the first portion of that original video as is. So some of the information is going to be dated. It's going to be from the perspective of having only seen the first 2 seasons of Discovery and a trailer for Picard as well as a trailer for Discovery Season 3. Picard had not premiered yet. Discovery Season 3 had not premiered yet. Lower Decks had not premiered yet. So essentially I am reviewing the first 2 seasons of Discovery and comparing that to some interesting things that at the time I observed in the Picard Season 1 trailer, which back then was all speculation in regards to Picard. But what I had to say about the first 2 seasons of Discovery, that hasn't changed. That's up to date, and you haven't heard me talk about any of that, so I'm just going to play it as is. After the tape, I'm going to come back to current day and conclude with some follow-up comments about Season 3 and maybe a word or two about Season 1 Picard. Fair warning, I did not remember how heated I got in this discussion. It is a bit of a rant, and I don't like to sound that way in my videos, but Discovery has so damaged the canonical continuity of the original series timeline, what CBS calls the prime timeline. Yeah, I admit it, I was pretty pissed, but I absolutely stand by what I said. So, without further ado, roll the tape. Hello? What's that? Oh, you see the new Picard trailer draw. Hey, cool. Thanks for letting me know. Yeah, I'm gonna check it out right now. Yeah, thanks. Bye.
Would you like to finish it, Captain? Is never safe from the past.
Please, sir. Someone's after me.
Your name, please, sir. Picard. P-I-C-A-R-D.
Whoa, now wait a minute. Are you guys seeing this? The newest Star Trek Picard trailer has dropped, and right smack in the middle of it, in the post-TNG era no less, is a gorgeous, authentic rendering of a TOS era that's original series era Romulan Bird-of-Prey. Now, how can that be? Because you guys at CBS Secret Hideout, all you smug geniuses behind Star Trek Discovery, have spent the last 3 years insisting that you could not take a design from the 1960s and make it look credible with modern CGI. You said it could not be done. You mocked fans and Matt Jeffries, snarking about cardboard sets. Called us every name in the book for daring to suggest that yes, it could, as exemplified by your own beautiful crafting of a TOS-style phaser. But no, in Discovery, not even the Enterprise can look like the Enterprise, because that would be just way too lame. So what, pray tell, is this? Moonjumper here. Let's talk some Trek.
One, please.
Good show. Who cares what I think? And welcome to the second ever installment of Who Cares What I Think. I am Moonjumper, and today we're talking Star Trek Picard, premiering January 23rd, 2020 on the CBS All Access streaming app. At almost 80 years old, Trek legend Patrick Stewart returns to the role which made him a legend, that of Starfleet Captain, now retired Admiral Jean-Luc Picard, former captain of the USS Enterprise D and E. And let me be clear, I'm not mad that we're seeing a TOS-style Bird-of-Prey show up in the trailer for Picard. On the contrary, I'm ecstatic. I'm mad because this is the kind of design aesthetic we should have been seeing on Discovery, the series that was supposedly set in the era this ship comes from. But instead, we got a Starfleet, and especially a Klingon fleet, which were completely unrecognizable as belonging to the same universe, let alone the same time period as Pike, Number 1, Kirk, and Spock in the mid-23rd century. But lo and behold, just as some of us were losing all hope that CBS cared what any Star Trek fan thinks, suddenly in the latest New York Comic-Con trailer for Star Trek Picard, we actually see glimpses of an unaltered Enterprise D, era-appropriate uniforms, welcome familiar faces, and some plot threads that imply that, who would have thought, a familiarity with the source material on the part of the writers and showrunners. It's almost as if maybe, just maybe, someone involved in Star Trek Picard has actually taken a weekend or two to watch the damn show they are basing a sequel on. What a concept! So kudos Michael Chabon and crew. I'm actually impressed by this trailer, and even cautiously optimistic that CBS is finally listening to us, the fans. But only cautiously optimistic after getting so badly burned with Star Trek Discovery. And as a matter of background, I'm going to be talking a lot about Discovery in this discussion. After all, there's not much to review as far as Picard. We haven't seen it yet, except a couple of trailers. But what we do have is a track record of the people behind the scenes of Picard. And, well, that involves Discovery. By the way, apologies ahead of time to Alex Kurtzman, and I know a very dedicated crew. Alex, if you're listening, I'm probably going to be rough on you. Please do not take it personally. I am actually a fan of yours, and I mean that sincerely. Hey, I enjoyed The Mummy, and I'm passionate about the Universal Monsters. I've seen and owned DVDs or Blu-rays of every title on this list. I get what you were trying to do with it, but I'm particularly passionate about Star Trek and its 50-year canon. I am a canonista, as they call it. So when it sounds like I'm being a complete trollish gatekeeper, who cares what I think? Please understand, I mean it strictly as tough love. I want your new revamped Trek franchise to succeed. I want it to add fans, not subtract from them. And I like what I'm seeing with the Picard trailers, plus I'm even going to defend Discovery on a couple of key points. But I've got some issues, which concerns me as we go into Picard. If we see Worf, he better look like Worf. That's the thesis here. And this is going to be a long video, long drive in my truck. I have a lot to say. So,
Warning! Warning! Spoiler alert for Star Trek Discovery. Discovery rant in progress. And of course possible spoilers for Star Trek Picard as well, even though at this point it's mostly all speculation because, well, we haven't seen it.
but you can call it an educated speculation. I know what I'm talking about when it comes to Trek. I am a lifelong Trekkie who's been with the franchise for most of its 50 plus years. I was already addicted to both the original series and the animated series when I was a little boy in the 1970s. And unlike some fans whose automatic knee-jerk is, oh no, you can't do a prequel, I was excited when I heard that Discovery was going to be returning to the era of the original series, or more specifically, the era of The Cage, the original pilot starring Jeffrey Hunter as Captain Pike, which was set just over a decade prior to the original series. Fans of Star Trek know this era of Trek history to be that of a true space western, back when the Federation was young, rather primitive, and the final frontier was truly that, a rough and tumble, mostly unknown wilderness, which was in stark contrast to the TNG era set 100 years later. By the days of Jean-Luc Picard, the Federation is established, comfortable, with technologies the original Enterprise crew could have barely imagined. And frankly, for me, the TNG era was a bit of a yawner. It was so safe, so comfortable, so evolved. Until we got to Deep Space Nine, which brought back that sense of rugged frontier we hadn't seen since the cowboy days of TOS. So the idea of returning to that era of a 1960s space western really appealed to me. We were told this wasn't going to be another JJ Trek type thing, the Kelvin timeline, which is set in a completely different timeline. This was going to be set in the same Prime timeline, the same continuity of Enterprise, the original series, the Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager. We were going back to the swashbuckling days of TOS. I was imagining that wonderful early 1960s aesthetic being given a fresh, polished, big budget look, but authentic, treated respectfully as a period piece. I don't think CBS has any idea how well received that would have been. You say what you want about Disney Star Wars when it comes to story and plot, you have to give them credit for being absolutely true to the visual aesthetic of the 1970s. Darth Vader still looks like Darth Vader. The Millennium Falcon still looks like the Millennium Falcon. Every manual switch and button is the same. There's no touch screens. And what's so damn futuristic about a touchscreen anyway? They've been around since the 80s. The first touchscreen I ever used was to order food in Epcot Center in 1982. That's 37 years ago, and it didn't exactly blow my mind even then. So when J.J. Abrams, the same director as the new Star Wars, did Star Trek 09, which is set approximately the same time as Discovery, the 2250s, only, different timeline, the ships of JJ's Starfleet may be ridiculously huge, stupidly huge, but they still look like Starfleet. They still resemble the aesthetic of TOS Trek, such as round, swirling warp nacelles, the Bassard collectors, Brian Fuller, even similar shuttlecrafts to TOS, while Discovery Shuttle's not even close. And JJ got the uniforms right, for crying out loud. And this was in a reboot set in a completely different continuity. What is Discovery's excuse for not even resembling the era and continuity it claims to be set in? Other than, oh come on, we can't go back to those cardboard sets and 60s designs. Hey, you guys, Alex Kurtzman et al., you chose this specific time period. Millennials and Gen Z you're trying to appeal to, they don't care anything about the Cage era. You chose that era. If you wanted to go hog-ass wild and do whatever you wanted, you could have started with Discovery Season 3, set it in the 32nd century, and the sky would have no limits, visually or technologically. the trailer for Discovery Season 3 actually looks really intriguing. If that's what you wanted to do, why didn't you just do that? But you chose the TOS era for the first 2 seasons, and I had been looking forward to that until I saw what you did with it. Not only in terms of visual continuity, which I'm sorry, yes, that is important. Visual canon is canon. But also in terms of story continuity, which is even more important. And well, Discovery just did whatever it wanted. It didn't matter what came before or after chronologically. Look, I'm a TOS aficionado, and I don't care if we find out that Spock has an adopted sister. I'm fine with that. That, in and of itself, does not break canon simply because Spock never mentioned her on screen. He didn't mention her because it wasn't relevant. Just like I'm sure Uhura, Sulu, and Scotty all have brothers, sisters, and family members we don't know about, because who cares? Unless it becomes relevant to the story. Obviously, Spock's sister Michael Burnham can now be revealed as relevant to Star Trek Discovery because, well, she's the star, so duh. That's completely fine in terms of continuity, and I rather like the character and the actress. Sure, I mean, you can argue that she's kind of shoehorned in, and I would agree with that. I don't think I would have tried to tie her to Spock, but that's not the same as violating continuity. That's just inserting something new into the continuity that we didn't know before, which is, well, basically the definition of a prequel. If you want to call it a retcon, that's fair, but that I don't have a problem with. What I do have a problem with is reptilian Kling-orcs with cloaking technology in the 2250s, while thinking they have to use radically destructive surgery to create a human-appearing sleeper agent completely unaware, meaning the writers were completely unaware, that Star Trek Enterprise did an entire story arc on the genetic creation of human-appearing Klingons, establishing an entire subspecies of human-appearing Klingons to be later seen again in, well, the original series. Discovery producers completely destroyed the long-established look of Klingons with these thick, Xindi reptilian masks. Klingons are mammals, just like us humans, but they ripped off Enterprise's Xindi reptilian mask, stuck them on Klingons just to hide the big non-reveal that Lieutenant Tyler really was Vok, the reptilian Kling-orc. The showrunners were completely unaware that Lieutenant Tyler could have been a human-looking sleeper agent all along without changing a mammalian humanoid species into reptilians. That's not just visual continuity, that involves story continuity. I have a problem with Starfleet being ruled by an AI exponentially more advanced than Richard Daystrom's M5 computer, which was supposed to be the first AI of its kind 10 years later. That's story continuity. What I have a problem with is an omnipotently powerful time-traveling Red Angel suit built by Starfleet, not in the distant future as was originally implied. No. It was built in the present day 23rd century, 10 years before the Enterprise discovered the slingshot effect. And, oh, by the way, it's powered by magic time crystals protected by the Klingons, no less, because, the Klingons would never misuse them for the glory of their empire. No, that's more than visual continuity. That's story continuity that makes no sense whatsoever. And what I do have a problem with is the invention of a pre-TOS spore drive, which was oh so secretive. Everyone in the freaking galaxy knew about it, from the Kling-orcs to Harry Mudd. But don't worry, all those many honest people with many divergent honest agendas are all agreeing to never mention or pursue it again because, well, young junior officer Spock said so. That, my friends, is not complaining about the visuals or the fact that Spock has a sister we didn't know about it. That breaks story canon like nothing I have ever seen in Star Trek. The funny thing is, when season 2 of Discovery first rolled around, the first half of the season was looking promising. For a minute, they at least pretended like they were actually listening to our concerns as fans. We got episodes that looked and felt a little more like Star Trek. The Klingons began to look and act a little more like Klingons. We even got a classic D7 battlecruiser. Hallelujah. And the addition of Anson Mount's Captain Christopher Pike and Ethan Peck's young Lieutenant Spock were refreshing portrayals. We even got a direct sequel to the 1964 pilot The Cage, which I think is probably the only Star Trek episode that any Discovery writer actually bothered to watch before writing a sequel to it. Because after that, the second half of the season went way off the deep end, even more so than the first season. We got Control, we got the Klingon time crystals powering a 23rd century Federation time suit, and we got the Enterprise, which apparently dwarfs the Battlestar Galactica with hundreds. I said hundreds of shuttles and fighter craft shooting out its rear end in the worst season finale in Trek history. Seriously, I did not think anything could outdo the awfulness of Enterprise's These Are the Voyages, but Discovery managed to pull it off. Hell, Threshold is a better episode than Discovery's season 2 finale. That's how bad it was. Well, in my opinion. Yeah, look, frankly, a lot of this wouldn't even be that big of an issue if they had either set this in some far-off future century, i.e. like Season 3 Discovery, or if they were just so determined to completely rewrite and reimagine the TOS Cage era for reasons. They could have just simply said, hey, this is a complete and total reboot and a completely different continuity. Most of us would have said, okay, fine, great, go wild, do whatever you want with the Klingons. But they insisted that no, this was not a reboot, it was not a separate timeline, it was totally, absolutely set in the same continuity as the original series. We promise we're serious about canon. We don't know anything about the canon and all those stupid cardboard sets, but we're serious about it. So, yeah, I was a little skeptical when these same folks announced that they were going to take on Picard. Are we still talking about Picard? Yes, we are. And now that we've been shown not one, but 2 trailers, I gotta say, I really, really like what I see. And I truly hope that this isn't just another trailer lying to us, as trailers often do. However, if any of it can be trusted, the 2 Picard trailers released so far actually tell us quite a bit about what we can expect to see as far as plot. Clearly, this is going to involve the Romulans, the Borg, a mysterious young woman on the run from possibly both, although it appears, at least on the surface, that this is going to involve former Borg drones being subjugated by the Romulans, and an elderly Jean-Luc coming out of retirement to lead a ragtag group of roguish misfits on an adventure that's clearly off Starfleet's bureaucratic books. Like I said, trailers lie a lot, and the people behind Discovery, I hate to say, have lied a lot. But this much seems reasonably apparent from the footage we've seen thus far. The new series also seems to tie into specific plot threads left over from TNG, the TNG movies, and Voyager. We see Picard clearly grieving the death of Data in Star Trek Nemesis as he lives out his twilight years on the same family vineyard we were introduced to in TNG's 4th season. And he seems both lonely and bored, as if no matter how old he gets, this is not where he really belongs.
Captain of the Enterprise.
That's right.
Close to retirement?
I'm not planning on it.
Let me tell you something. Don't let them promote you. Don't let them transfer you. Don't let them do anything that takes you off the bridge of that ship, because while you're there, you can make a difference.
We see Hugh, the liberated Borg drone we met in TNG, and Jerry Ryan returns as 7 of 9 in a role that appears to be much more than a cameo, but indeed significant. We also get hints of possible Romulan refugee camps, presumably following the destruction of Romulus in Star Trek 09. But wait, Moonjumper, I thought you said Star Trek 09 was set in a different timeline. And yes, it is. Mostly. But Spock and the Romulan villain Nero supposedly breached the New Kelvin timeline, having both originated in the original Prime timeline, of which we're all familiar. Well, except for the writers of Discovery, which, they've never watched any of it. But anyway, regardless, the destruction of Romulus supposedly took place in the original Prime timeline, whereas the destruction of Vulcan took place in the New Kelvin timeline created by Star Trek 09. In the Prime timeline, Vulcan was never destroyed, well, at least up until now, and now being the late 24th century, over 100 years after the days of Kirk and Spock, and presumably Michael Burnham, so we're told. It looks to me as if the survivors of the former Romulan Empire have broken up into various splinter groups. One of them remains an oppressive regime subjugating former Borg drones in prison camps and experimenting with Borg technology. Another faction is clearly going to be aligned with Picard, and these Romulans are going to be more of a freedom fighter sect, trying to throw off the shackles of the old Empire. I wouldn't be surprised if these good guy Romulans working with Picard are somehow connected to the underground Romulan-Vulcan reunification movement once led by Spock. Well, actually the bad guy Romulans want reunification too, but they want it through violent conquest, while Spock's disciples are looking to be more like their Vulcan cousins, logical and non-violent. By the way, here's a visual makeup change I actually agree with. Notice the Romulans in Picard, and the same was actually true in Star Trek 2009. They don't have the heavy exaggerated brow ridges we saw in the TNG era. Here's a case where it was TNG that broke the canon by giving Romulans heavy brow ridges in contrast to what we saw in both TOS and the TOS movies. Apparently, the TNG makeup guys were unaware that Vulcans and Romulans are the exact same species, that Romulans migrated from Vulcan over 5,000 years ago. The makeup artist working on Picard actually got the Romulans right. Romulans are supposed to look like Vulcans because basically they are Vulcans. So thank you for making that correction. Since the TNG Romulans are canon, I assume they're still around, and the little subtle ridges on this guy support that, but we finally have it reconfirmed that the more Vulcan-appearing Romulans of TOS also still exist. Just like DS9 and Enterprise both reconfirmed that the human-looking Klingons of TOS also really did exist. Discovery writers don't know that, but it seems like the people working on Picard may be a little better versed in the lore. That's the right way to do a visual update and to marry together canon that initially seems contradictory. And stop the tape. I'll probably play some more when I do a follow-up video on Picard, but in the meantime, here I am back in October 2021, actually recording this on the very day that Captain Kirk himself, William Shatner, has been launched into space at 90 years old. Wow, there are no words other than God bless you, William Shatner. You are the captain. Discovery Season 3 has already happened. Season 4 is just weeks away, and Picard Season 2 is on its way, and it looks pretty badass. Q is going to be back. I'm excited to see it. Picard Season 1 actually started out, it was not bad. It was okay. Not awesome by any stretch, but I wasn't completely wrong in my assessment of the trailer. A lot of people didn't like the direction that the story took. I thought the finale was extremely weak, but at least it didn't destroy the continuity of the next generation. Well, for the most part. There are some oddities that pop up like, wait a minute, I thought we worked out equal rights for androids 30 years ago. What's going on now? And that's a fair question, but keep in mind, politics change and utopias do fall. We're seeing that right now. 60 years ago, true liberals righteously fought to end segregation and bring us all together. Today you have illiberal forces on the left trying to bring segregation back as some kind of virtue, which is chilling. And Star Trek Picard actually parallels that quite beautifully. We even saw a hint of that beginning to happen way back on Voyager, where former EMHs were being forced into slave labor at a very dark ending of an episode, which to my recollection was never resolved. So that's not really a continuity violation. It's a rather chilling new development some 30 years later. These are events, love them or hate them, which take place decades after the next generation. You may not like what happens, and I have some issues which I'll talk about in a future video, but it doesn't change any of the events which took place 30 years ago in TNG, DS9, or Voyager, unlike the first two seasons of Discovery, which went out of its way to destroy the continuity of the original series. I'm getting mad again. And again, I'm not just talking visually, which is important too, by the way, but the story continuity has been completely disrupted, which affects the entire timeline, not just the original series. Season 3 Discovery was was better. Not particularly good, but kind of like Picard. They're in the future. At least they can't do any more damage to the timeline than they've already done. Oh, crap. Whatever. We'll see what happens with Strange New Worlds. But looking back at Season 3... well, I mean, I wasn't too impressed. The whole thing about the burn, which I thought was going to be interesting, was beyond ridiculous when they revealed what the source was. Complete nonsense. But, you know, I liked Book. He was a great character. He's kind of a Han Solo type. I like the Admiral, and I like the Orion villain. I also appreciate that Discovery actually acknowledged the temporal Cold War from Enterprise, which, if they were smart, they would use the temporal Cold War to explain why the world created by Discovery is so radically different than the world of TOS. And I created my own graphic to illustrate how that might work. And that would actually make some level of sense. It would basically fix everything. But no, so far the showrunners are hell-bent to insist that Discovery and Strange New Worlds are direct prequels to the original series, set in the same timeline, while simultaneously doing their utmost to decanonize the original series. It's frankly bizarre. Regardless, the problem I have, and this is going to be ironic, the problem I have with the Federation and Starfleet of the 32nd century is that it's too recognizable as the Starfleet we know. It's been 900 years, and they're still using the same iconography, largely the same design aesthetics of the 23rd and 24th century. This after Discovery went out of its way to create a 23rd century that was completely unrecognizable. If they wanted to go wild and take it in a completely new direction, this would have been the era to do it in. The Discovery crew should have landed in a universe that was completely unfamiliar, completely alien to them. I mean, look, what was our world like 900 years ago? Nothing remotely close to what it's like today. But no, now they get conventional with a recognizable Starfleet. Season 4 is even going to see the Discovery crew finally wearing the classic division colors on the uniforms. Seriously, now you're going to do that? 900 years too late? Gee, thanks. I don't know. I don't see a lot of hope for Discovery, but, you know, Strange New World, I'm still hopeful. I fully expect them to destroy the timeline even worse, but look, I will wait and see what they do with it. I honestly try my best not to prejudge things. I'm going to watch it. I'm excited about it, and of course I'll stick with Picard a while longer. I'll keep laughing at Lower Decks. Mike McMahon actually likes Star Trek. He's not trying to destroy it. And we'll see what happens with Prodigy. That actually looks interesting, but who cares what I think? From deep in the heart of Texas, I am Moonjumper. We'll talk more Trek as soon as I can get to it. Might be a few topics in between. We'll see. Either way, smash that subscribe button and notification bell so you'll know whenever the next video drops. See y'all next time.